All right. Good day. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Live the Fuel show. So, as usual, I'm connecting with all types of new people. And for those of you listening to the show for, God, 7 years now, over 400 shows, I love geeking out about health, wellness, and fitness. Now, obviously, we're here to fuel your health, your business, and your lifestyle on Live the Fuel. And the gentleman I'm bringing on today as the latest guest co-host might understand a little bit about that. Actually, he and I were just riffing about the power and the value of those who choose to serve in public service. And I maybe that'll be an angle of today's show. We don't script the show, but man, I have some stories about lack of guidance when I served and in fire, and the lack of programs or education to teach you what to put in your body so you can get the most value out of it. So anyway, this gentleman, he's a certified wellness coach. I've had them on the show before. Definitely had fitness experts on before. And he's a husband. He's a father. He's a former police officer. So again, there's that alignment. Heck, gym owner, competitive state level bodybuilder. I mean, he might know a few things. So again, we're talking about for the powerlifting people. I mean, yes, I was a CrossFit trainer. Yes, there's Olympic lifting, there's powerlifting, there's all these different forms of being able to pick weights up and put them down. But also, this gentleman has a little story of weight loss in his history too, and I think that's very powerful in the modern day. Right now, we have epic levels of diabetes and heart disease, and it's all because we did it to ourselves. So, without further ado, David Greenwalt, sir, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, again, we don't script the show, but as I was giving your intro, I was like, yeah, wait, maybe we start off on what you and I took away from serving in public service, and maybe align on the lack of proper knowledge and education. And here, I'll be the jerk from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
My one client's office, I was there a few hours ago, in their corporate suites of offices. It's interesting buildings. They have like mini warehouses attached to them. So every small business can have like a little storage area, big roll up garage doors, everything else, if you have to do big business deliveries. So no joke, the local hospital network, and I'll shout them out, St. Luke's, they're a big name. They decided to, I guess they have their own ambulance corps besides all the other outsourced ambulance corps. So now there's a St. Luke's van now backing into one of these garage bays next door to my client's office. So it's like, okay, so it's just a one-off. They're just renting one office suite and parking one van. And then whoever's on that van's crew are rotating it throughout the day, 24 hours a day, coming in, coming out, get on shifts, driving the ambulance. And today I saw 3 highly overweight professionals going in there. And for years, it's always kind of tripped my trigger. And I was like, I'm not trying. Well, sometimes I could be a dick, but it's like, you know what? How are you going to save me? Maybe I should save myself. Now, are we starting a little polarized for you? Is that a little rough? I don't know. I'm just throwing out there because we had to go through a lot of weight management. And I mean, dude, hiking 16 hours a day in the mountains when I was a wildland firefighter, you can't come into the season 40 pounds overweight, let alone 100 pounds or more overweight. Right. It's literally a detriment and a risk to your fellow crew members and your Chris. So how would you like to kick off on that?
I was a police officer for 10 years. And the reason I was a police officer for only 10 years is I had a fitness business that I'd never expected to take off, that took off big. And my passion has always been fitness. I've been involved in fitness since I was a little kid. I mean, involved in the sense of being interested in it. When I was a little kid in grade school, I wanted the President's Council on Physical Fitness Award. I wanted that award. I was like, who cares? I wasn't a great athlete. I was like a B team, C team kid. But when it came to that, it was broad jump a certain distance. It was run a certain time in a short distance, throw a baseball, climb a rope, things like that. Yeah. And I was like, man, that just sounds cool to me. And I wanted that award. So
I remember those. Do they still do that program?
I need to look and see, because I still have my patch certificate in a lockbox somewhere, because I was so proud to get that, and
I'm just wondering if we have failed our youth. I hope that program is still around, but we could be failing our youth right now.
You prompted me. I'm going to take that as a homework assignment. I'm going to look, because I do want to know. I'm with you. I'd like to know.
Oh yeah, because as a kid, I was probably a C. You said ABC. I'm like, dude, right. I was one of those kids. I mean, I grew up on a farm, so I was working hard every morning and every night, and then going to school. So I really didn't want to do gym and do the fitness tests. And then, like, I remember I sucked at running around the track. But I got into baseball, got into basketball, taught me to interact with other kids, also learned my limitations as health and fitness. But to your point, I remember that our upper echelon athletes, they were going for that. That program was like, you have to go for that.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, for me, it was in the 70s. So, you know, it was, but anyway, you know, with that being the case, I, you know, stayed in fitness, and anyway, police officer, 10 years. Why only 10 years? Well, I finally ended up taking a leave of absence, and then ended up leaving I was an Illinois state trooper, and I ended up leaving because a fitness business that I had, not the one I have now, a different fitness business I had started, you know, really took off. But, you know, throughout that, I also, even when I was a police officer, I was super interested in fitness. I was bodybuilding and powerlifting, even when I was a police officer. As a police officer, I got as heavy as like 235 pounds as a powerlifter, and I'd get down to 175 pounds for a bodybuilding competition. And then would kind of hang out somewhere in that 200-pound range to 210 range, somewhere in there. And it just kind of varied.
Wow. What's your height?
5'10". Wow.
I'm just under 6'4", and I think the heaviest I've been was 205 when I was a bouncer. That's why, I mean, I was probably like 22 back then, but that wasn't a healthy 205. So
yeah.
I was eating hot wings and drinking Guinness at the end of the night when you closed the bar down. It probably wasn't the smartest lifestyle choices, but I was 22.
No, I get it. And I'll tell the story on me, but to answer your question, is it polarizing? Well, you know, no, I mean, the way I look at it is, to get on the police department, I started as a city police officer, and then I went on, became state trooper. Both of them required, you know, a physical fitness test. We had to pass tests to get on, you know, and we tested, you know, 5 major areas of physical fitness: cardiorespiratory endurance, muscular strength, muscular endurance, body composition, and flexibility. We had, you know, tests we had to pass, and there were certain thresholds, validated, studied, challenged, the whole thing. But most departments, and they're still this way, once you're on, you're on. And
thank you. Let's pause on that real quick.
Yeah.
People listening to this, when you're on, meaning, okay, you made it in, you're good. And I'm like, no. Now, like, the fun thing about my gig, real quick, you'll appreciate, was I wasn't a full-time federal employee. So I came in late in the game. They called me old guy. I was 31. They called me old guy at 31.
Yeah.
Because again, the basis of Hot Shots was it's all these star athletes coming out. If you didn't go in the military, you went here. Like if you're in the Western U.S., or it's people coming out of college, or they're former military, right? But every single season, you had to do the PAC test. You had to do the PT analysis. And I mean, again, a lot of it is mental, but yeah, you got a 45-pound pack. You have a 3-mile hike. You have to do that in less than 45 minutes, and you can't run. It's got to be a speed, consistent, head down, pushing forward with your pack weight on, go. And I always finish in the top 3 because I'm a hair competitive.
Yeah.
And I trained for it. Like my first Mountaineer backpack, I put sandbags in it. I went out onto an old rail line that now they call them rails to trails in all these different states. So converting like the bike paths and everything. And I just started hiking. I just sit to watch and go. And that was training.
Yeah. Well, you know,
once you're in, and I'm like, no, because I had to come back every season to retest, and then we would test throughout the season too.
Right.
So interesting.
It is. And you know what? While I was on the state police, they did mostly do an annual recheck, so to speak. But not a lot of departments did, and it's still a lower percentage that do than don't. And so I do find that very strange.
You know, I can align with you on that because I have friends that are Pennsylvania state troopers. And like I was mentioning you before the show, one of the guys has definitely got a history of powerlifting. I mean, he's just a brick. You know, I mean, I don't see him running anybody down anytime soon. He'll probably pull the taser and drop them before they get a chance to get away from the car. But I will say most of the state police that I see on the highway here in Pennsylvania are fit. I mean, if you subtract that vest look, I think it's more local or city departments is what I've seen, at least here. Again, that's just a assumption. I'm only going off from my observations and all my travels because I travel a lot. So
I don't know. I don't follow it closely enough anymore to know if that's true, you know, kind of across the board, but I definitely get the perception. But the perception as a whole, you know, for your listeners that may say, so these guys had to test, and David was a police officer and he had to test and had to pass tests to get on the department. a lot of people will think, rightfully so, so why are so many people that I see on whatever department so heavy? They look so out of shape. They look like if they had to actually run someone down, could be tragic for them. I mean, it doesn't look like it's going to go well, and that's justified. There's a lot of that. So why is that the case? Well, unfortunately, it gets challenged in courts. Somebody wins. There's a lawsuit. There's something along those lines. Departments aren't as proactive as they should be in figuring out how to set it up in more of a positive way rather than something that's a takeaway, and so it can be done, and departments are doing it. There are departments that are progressive, and I don't mean progressive, liberal, conservative. I don't mean that. Progressive in their thinking, in that they're like, hey, we can figure this out. We can make this so that it's a positive, and we take nothing away, but we want our officers checked.
It's something that I've always been concerned about because, again, I only served for a couple of years. You served for 10 years. Whether it's police, fire, military, I have a high respect for all those who choose to serve in public service. And then, yes, now granted, there is a personal accountability, right? We have to be personally accountable for what we're doing, how we're putting out. But to your point, and I'm going to generalize, but at these local cities, whatever, these police departments, fire, EMS, et cetera, if they're not putting the education in the forefront, or at least requiring it, or at least as a basic expectation, well, then yes, people can get lazy. And it's like, well, my home life is my home life. Like, well, no. One, it's not helping your family either. If you're living that way, because again, what I'm going down here, and I'm intrigued to see how you're going to respond, is you've got Leanness Lifestyle University, right? That's a big part of your brand. And I geek out about this stuff because I said, you don't need to be a fitness guru. You don't even have to have a gym membership. One of my former clients, he's been on the show many times. I mean, one of the earliest fitness experts. He was the trainer to the stars out in LA, Vinny Tortorich. He's founder of the trademark NSNG, no sugar, no grains, big part of my lifestyle choices. And again, whether you're vegan, vegetarian, doesn't matter. At least the NSNG thing totally aligns. So if you're not a big carnivore and you're a vegan, or like, he can at least still help you. But his whole career was just, people are like, well, how do you get people ready for a movie? How'd they drop all that weight? He's just like, yeah, exercise is the fountain of youth. You got to move the body. But he's like, you don't fix the kitchen? What? I'm just spinning my wheels. I'm spinning your wheels at the same time. And I love that because if the officers aren't going home and being incentivized, and I'm not saying financially, incentivized to take that part seriously, then you get this age-old joke of, oh, you're a police officer? Were you at the Dunkin' Donuts today or whatever, donut shop or whatever? And I'm like, okay, all right, let's pull that crap out of the movies. Right. Here's where we're going. Like, all of a sudden you're the junk food guy or whatever. And people are like, oh, well, I can't make it work with my lifestyle. Right. So I'm just intrigued because you have lifestyle in your brand. My show is, health, business, and lifestyle. So I just want to have fun with that with you. And I was like, well, what are your thoughts on that little angle there about accountability?
I think that if we're coming at it a couple different ways, from a department perspective, obviously, like you said, unscripted, my thoughts go to leadership is incredibly important in companies, in police departments, in anything. Leadership's incredibly important. And we've got grocery stores here. We live in Springfield, Illinois. We have grocery stores here. We've got 6, 8, 10 of them, whatever it is. And we can go into one. And we just did, wife and I just did a couple of months in Central Florida to get out of the cold here. And so there's a grocery store down there. And so that comes to mind. So grocery stores, they all have food or ultra processed food. Well, let's just say they all have food.
Right? I'm air quoting for the listeners, but on YouTube, it'll be air quoting, but it's like,
exactly. No, we're both air quoting. Yeah. And because I only say that just for the common vernacular, but I'm right there 100% with you. So they all have stuff that's similar in their 4 walls or whatever it is. But you go to one, we've got one here in town where you can have 2 people jaw jacking as you're checking out. And I can bag my own stuff, but they're jaw jacking right there. And it probably would be good if they came over to the end of the counter where I'm with someone who's ringing me up. In the rare instance you get somebody to ring you up anymore these days, instead of self-serve. Anyway, they're ringing me up, we're doing it. And we see them over there jaw jacking, and we're like, you could come over and bag the groceries for us. It's a part of the service. You kind of sort of.
You mean your job?
You're right. And so, and they don't. And then also the checkout, the person will be like, have a good one. I guess that's the new thank you, have a good one. I just spent $300 on groceries and we get have a good one. Now, a different grocery store.
I have really paid attention. That's a really good point.
Right. Have a good one. Okay.
I was just at a grocery store yesterday and I totally got to have a good one.
Have a good one. All right. Oh. I mean, hey, it's not bad, but it's like, okay. I mean, it's like, for me, I'm just, again,
thank you for your patronage. Thank you for coming and shopping at our store and paying my salary or my hourly wage. Yeah.
And it can just be simple, hey, thanks so much for coming in. Have a good day. All right. Awesome. That's all I need. Something simple. All right. But have a good one. All right. Another store. I don't know. Are we in a different planet? No, it's leadership. The other store, you do it. It is the thank you. It is somebody bagging. If somebody's standing over on the side and they aren't busy doing something, they're immediately over there bagging. And we also got I couldn't believe it. We got can I help you take this out to your car?
Ooh, very nice.
Take this out to your car.
Wow.
That's like 1970s or 60s or something. I'm like, holy cow.
David, literally, this is one of my very first jobs I ever had. When I was 15, I was like, I had to wear a white dress shirt with red suspenders and a red bow tie and black slacks. And I bagged the groceries. And then if someone of an aging population or a possible injury, whatever, we took that stuff to their car. So a long time ago.
Where we were in Central Florida, wife and I are both over 55. We were in a 55 community. We're absolutely fit. We did it all ourselves, but we still got offered. And so, but beyond that, it was the back. What's the difference? Leadership. What's the difference? They were trained a certain way. This is what we expect. This is our culture. This is how. So transferring that back over to police departments, there are, again, personal responsibility. I get that as a police officer. You're going to hopefully feel some sense of that, but a lot of people aren't as naturally inclined to fitness and health as you and I and some other people that maybe. I'm naturally inclined to it. I just am wired. I don't know why. Again, something in my DNA. A lot of people aren't. If the culture of the police department is such where in a positive way, not a negative way, but in a positive way, we are fitness oriented. It's important. Here's the reasons. Here's the education, why it's important. It's not just about what's best for the department, which of course it is, but it's best for you. It's best for the home. It's best for the family. It's best for all this. And this is a big thing. It's always going to be important as long as you're a police officer or a firefighter, whatever the deal is, whatever command, leadership in this case, if they're all about it and it's done right, that just bleeds into every single person who's in the department. So how I feel about it is leadership is critical to creating an environment and a culture that can bleed into every fiber and cell of the police officer and the firefighter's body to help them to set the tone, to set the paradigms, to set the mindset to make those better choices. In the end, does the individual still have the responsibility? Yeah, they should. But each department, and if the department heads, brass, whatever, if they don't, then that also gets represented. So I have to put it onto, of course, individuals, but I have to at a department level look at it like that grocery store and say, wait a minute, two different stores, two incredibly different experiences, one reason. These aren't different human beings working.
It's culture.
It's culture. These human beings are checking out and bagging groceries. These human beings are checking out and bagging groceries. Both are probably good, decent people, but it's the culture, it's their training, it's what's expected. And
I love where you went there because I think there's a lack. I mean, again, we don't get into church, religion, politics, or anything else in the show, but I think I'm safe to say across the board, there's a lack of leadership in so many areas of the world today. It's not even funny. I could just stick right here, state by state. You're in Illinois, Florida, and Pennsylvania. We can just talk about those three states. Doesn't matter. The point here is that you're right. There is a cultural bleed that can be happening in a positive way or a negative way.
Yes. And
there's already too much negativity in the world as it is. Right. So, and serving as a police officer, which I can't speak to, but I have literally I was just texting an officer today because he's been working a credit card theft case for me from back in December. And I can't wait because I told him, like, dude, get your captain to talk to whatever, your PR people. And then as soon as we're allowed to talk about this, I want to blow that department up with a positive case study, podcast, everything else. I was like, I got portable equipment. I will come to you guys. I want to highlight you that, hey, look, everybody who thinks police are bad or whatever, I'm like,
Yeah.
look at what they did. I mean, they've been working on this for months, and I love it. But he's that guy. That's what we're talking about. He wants to change his culture. He's a fellow health and fitness guy. And he's like, man, he's like, maybe I'll have you guys, maybe you could just talk to the leadership. And I'm like, I don't run like you. I don't have Leanness Lifestyle University. I'm just, he's like, no, but Sky, he's like, you have the gift of gab and people listening to you. And I'm like, well, thank you. But he's like, I don't understand why he's only been on this department for about a year. Okay. And he goes, yeah, nobody talks about health, fitness, other than, oh, your blood test requirements are coming up and the insurances are getting more expensive. And I'm like, well, why do you think our insurances are getting more expensive? Doesn't matter if you're a government employee or a regular consumer. These are all things that we have control over impacting and can bring down if we start taking accountability for where our knowledge base is at. And here's my thing. It's not like I need to have you come on or, oh God, I forget his name. He was a gut health expert because he was a power lifter, put all this weight on, would shred out for bodybuilding. And he would do this for years and then realized he was destroying his body. I'm sure you could talk to this. And it's like, yeah, that's probably not healthy. Like dropping 20, 30 pounds and throwing 30, 40 back on. And you're on this roller coaster ride and it screwed all of his gut health up. And it took him a couple of years to rebuild, but he healed himself. He healed the body. And it's like, okay, well, there's so many paths that a police department could take or an EMS department or just regular people listening to this show. And it's like, a lot of my common responses are, well, where do I start? Yeah. And I was like, well, it's not rocket science, guys. Like, I'm not asking you to become a gut health expert. Now, granted, like you, I've always been inclined to health and fitness. I'm a bit of a geek. So everybody in my family, all overweight. Nobody looks like me, bro. They'd be like, oh, well, you must have great genetics. It's like, no, genetics have nothing to do with it. Yeah, I'm sure there's a little bit depending on the person. But with me, it was a lifestyle choice. It was a personal commitment. I don't live in the gym anymore. I'll be 46 this year. Yeah. I think I hit my gym twice this week, but I've been outside all weekend running chainsaws and picking pieces of tree up and hiking them all over my property because I like to organize my firewood. But it's like, hey, outdoor workout, you know? So how do you get into that conversation? Because off of everything we're talking about here, it's like, I think a lot of police departments are guilty of this too, or regular consumers. Like, well, where do we start? There's so much. There's so much to digest. So
we come at Leanness Lifestyle University, even though fitness has been in my kind of personal DNA. What happened was I was running a when I was a state trooper, I started a little supplement company, and I thought if I can just make enough money to pay for my own protein powder, I'll be happy. If I can just make enough money to pay for my own protein powder, I'll be happy.
It's a simple goal.
Right. Yeah. Right. And so, back, we call it a side hustle now, but it was just the thing. There was no internet. And so I placed little classified ads in the back of bodybuilding magazines like Flex Magazine, Iron Man, and it was a toll-free number. And I couldn't even answer the phone, Scott, because I was a police officer working. So people they'd have to call and leave a message. Hey, dude, I want to get some protein powder or whatever. All right. So what happened was that little business that I started in 1992 over a period of about 5 years grew into $5 million in revenue and 45 employees.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah. And so it did much better than I thought it would. And I thought, well, I'm finally paying for my own supplements. And so, what happened was, though, we had tens of thousands of real customers through that company, and I was still a police officer. But what happened was the internet also started coming in, emails started coming in, people started emailing me. They knew I researched it. I would have to go to a medical library in DeKalb, Illinois, Northern Illinois University, photocopy research, bring it back to my office, read it, highlight it, write about it. And I put out a monthly newsletter back then.
Cool.
Back then anyway, so people knew that I was researching and writing about. I always wanted to be the quote unquote truth teller. I wanted to set the record straight. I was that kind of a person, and people knew that. So when email came, they'd be like, "Hey, Dave," and they knew I did powerlifting and bodybuilding and all that stuff. Wrote about nutrition, exercise, fitness, all of that for years. And so they'd say, "Hey, Dave, real quick. I don't want to bother you. I don't want to be a pest or anything, or cause you too much trouble. But if you get a moment, if you could just tell me how to lose 30 pounds and keep it off forever."
I like how at the end I just toss, "Oh yeah, and keep it off forever."
And keep it off forever. I mean, no big deal. So I gave it the old college try. I did my best. I wanted to help these people, and I realized quickly that I was doing them a disservice by trying to throw it on the back of a napkin. Fortune cookie answers, that kind of thing. And I had so much in my head, I was like, okay. But what I realized is that I wasn't passionate about supplements. I was passionate about fitness, but in trying to answer these questions with email coming in, I was so passionate about wanting to help people get from someplace typically heavier and less healthy to someplace leaner and healthier. And so I ended up, I wrote a book, and it was, it's almost, 500 pages. And you probably just showed that picture of it, but it's this little gem,
I
And
say
so,
it's not a little gem,
right.
it has some thickness. I mean,
It does.
that's definitely over an inch. I mean, we're
Yeah. Oh,
probably
yeah.
about an inch and a half.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
But
that's solid. I'll screen share again just because it's right on the main. Again, ladies and gentlemen, just go to lluniversity.com, and it's
yeah,
the first thing you'll see when the page loads. So
right. So the thing is that the book ended up being almost 500 pages because I really wanted it to be comprehensive on nutrition, exercise, and a huge area, Scott, that so at the time, I still don't know of a book in 1999 when I did my first edition that covered nutrition, exercise, and emotional fitness. So as I kind of get with you on this, is like the idea of personal responsibility. Trust me, back then when I first started kind of doing this, I was 32. And then I wrote the book, and I was helping people. At first, my thinking was, let's keep it simple. It's a caloric expenditure. It's a caloric balance thing. And then, for a little while, my head was, what is going on? Why aren't you able to do this? Why are you able to just make the caloric, balance work? What is going on? You're smart people. I see you're educated, you're physicians, you're pilots, you're police officers, you're whoever, nurses, whoever you are, you've got so many other things going right in your life. Why is this so difficult? And I really, explored that path. And, one of the huge elements is, emotional fitness. And so what happens typically is it's only one of the elements, but when emotional fitness is not going well, when we're not able to manage life well, when we're not able to handle or feel like we can handle the stress and strife of life that's going on, that's when we are quite often going to see the nutrition and exercise principles kind of just go off into the ditch.
mm-hmm.
I say it this way, and I don't mean it literally. I can teach anybody the basics of nutrition for health and fitness in about an hour.
Sure.
I can teach anyone the basics of exercise for health and fitness in about an hour. And I don't mean that literally, but just for the purposes of the example, it holds mostly true. So again, people, if it's eat less, exercise more, calories in, calories out, why don't you do it? Why don't you do it? Why do we have 43% obesity right now in adults? Why are we going to have 50% obesity in 2030?
Well, it's like the quote you shared with my team when we got you all set up here. It's not willpower; it's why power that gets you to your goal. Because everybody's got a bad day, bad week, bad month, heck, bad year.
Right.
I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. Some days that mental switch flips, and you just don't want to go do anything. The problem is you're going to keep allowing that switch to get flipped. I mean, everybody's got a bad day. Dude, sometimes you got to take that. Again, R&R. When I was firefighting, right? Couldn't wait for R&R.
Yeah.
Rest and recovery.
Right.
But it wasn't just the physical, it was the mental.
Yes.
So I love how you call it emotional health too, because now more than ever, there is such a massive increase in psychological issues and stress and depression. And again, I have people in my family who suffer from it. And I made the old joke back in the day, because I was an old gym rat. I was like, I never met an unhappy person in the gym. I mean, everybody usually left semi-smiling or ridiculously smiling because they're high on life, and their serotonin level is through the roof because it has had an epic workout. But
no doubt. I mean, obviously they have found, a lot of people have seen, the information on exercise having certain kinds and amounts and intensity levels of exercise having, similar to better effects as some antidepressant drugs and so on and so on and so on. It's incredibly powerful on the mind. I say all the time with regard to, my students, that the caloric burn of exercise to me is not the greatest benefit of exercise. The greatest benefit of exercise is the mental and fitness aspects of exercise. Caloric burn, great, we'll take it. It's awesome. But the mental and fitness aspects of exercise to me just far outweigh any of the benefits of the caloric burn, although it's great to have it.
Well, that's what I've found too. I mean, again, I used to, not at your level, but I've done health and fitness in my life for years. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was in the corporate life, I became such a nut. I wasn't sure if I was going to become a professional trainer one day because I just loved it so much. Next thing you know, I'm going away on the weekends, getting certified in spinning instruction. Next thing you know, I'm running a 6 a.m. class like 5 days a week because I'm a cyclist too. So it's like, great, my legs are already warmed up for tonight's ride with the boys. And they hated it because I was ripping the lid off. And I'm an endurance sports guy. So then firefighting, going out to Arizona, having my one squad boss was big into, quote, CrossFit. And I was like, what is CrossFit? This is 2010.
Yeah.
It had only been around for a couple of years.
Right.
And he taught me, he's like, well, that's just this new brand thing. He was smart enough to know. He's like, it's functional fitness. He's like, you're about to go do a very functional job, like hiking with a 30-pound chainsaw on your shoulder for 16 hours a day with 40 to 50 pounds of crap on your back. And you got to dig in the dirt while you're at it too. So, and it got a lot of what they did, just like the military, man. They broke you down for the first 2 weeks. It was critical training. We were doing 2-a-days. Again, for people hearing that, 2 days just means 2 workouts a day. But a lot of that was to see where everybody's mental limits were at, because they knew as we got into the fire season, the accumulated exhaustion, the accumulated stress on the body and the mind was going to build, because you went all out for 6 months in wild and fire seasons. We ran from April to September. You hit your just under 2,000 hours and you time out. The federal government doesn't want to pay you anymore because then they have to count you as a full-time employee and pay benefits. You're a seasonal monkey is what I called it in my book. But that was everybody was strong, dude. Everybody busted their butts. Some were stronger than others. But I noticed right off the bat, because I was considered the old guy, there's a different emotional state and mental state. And I mean, we had people ranging from 18, to 40 years old on my crew. So it was very interesting, like people watching that and studying it and just being aware of all of that. Because it was such a dangerous job. So I was always keeping my head on a swivel with everybody around me, because I knew my game was pretty dialed in, only because I was considered older. So I already had a good 10 plus years that I put in my own work. And I didn't know it was going to serve me so well until I went and did that job. And I'm like, oh, thank God I did that work. But the average person that you come across, right? It's like you bring that up and like, what do you mean? What's emotional? What's there's a great book, Emotional Intelligence. Great book. Do people know about it? No. Usually, I'm interested to hear your point here. What is it with us as a species? I truly believe mankind, we want to do great things on this world. We want to do great things for our family. Like once you find your why, it's there. But everybody finds it to be daunting. Everybody needs to say they have to have a purpose behind it. And that's why I go back to your quote, right? It's the why power. But why is it that everybody waits until they're already in the negative? I'm not saying everybody, that's a pretty generalized statement, but like, oh, okay, now I'm already 100 pounds overweight. Oh, now I'm already on antidepressants. Oh, now I've got a cholesterol issue or a heart disease issue or a diet. You see where I'm going with this? And it's like, why are we letting ourselves, when we're capable of so much, go down that emotional, depressed path? How do we catch them sooner? How do we get them in line sooner to help themselves?
It's a great question. I think that part of the reason, I'll give this quote: for every complex problem, there's an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. And so since a complex question, I'll try not to just turn it into one thing, do a reductionist thing.
I respect that.
But I'll say this. I think that part of the answer is, if you have worked with people at all in the addiction space, or you've worked, or someone, or you are, or whatever the case may be, it's not rational. So you go, because in my head, when I was 32, I was like, rational, what is going on here? Come on, guys. It's, quote, not that hard. Just, come on, let's get the caloric dialed in. I've got the answer for you. We know how to eat better, Okay. One of the very first, I promise I'm answering the question. One of the very first people that completely changed my paradigm for one of the factors responsible for what you're asking was a woman named Kay Shepard, who wrote the book From the First Bite. She's a food addiction expert, and she's a food addict, and she writes about it. She's very open about it. She has actually an inpatient facility now. I think Kay, I don't want to put her, Kay's got to be in her 70s, maybe early 80s now. So
okay.
she,
she's been at it for a while. Yeah.
A long time. And this was 20 some years ago when I first was getting into this. And I interviewed her. Now, back then we didn't call them podcasts, but I would interview experts. This is no joke, Scott. I would interview experts. I would record them onto a cassette tape through my phone. And then I would I had the cassette tapes duplicated and send them out to my members. So they got cassette tapes in the mail once a month.
I remember, again, I'm not your age, but I'm not that far behind you.
Right.
And yeah, when I started getting into self-work, self-development, initially it was like professional because I was a farm kid. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to go make the big dollars. I got to find a professional path. So I fell into that route because I'm a big mindset guy. Yeah. So I got to surround myself with knowledge. Yeah. In the beginning, it was like, you did tapes and then eventually became CDs.
Right.
And now it's all digital content.
Digital, right.
And I still geek out to this day. I'm not just a podcaster. I'm a voracious consumer.
Yeah.
When I'm in my car, I travel a lot. I do a lot of high-end sales and marketing consultation from my business. And last year I did 35,000 miles just driving.
Boy.
To go meet with CEIOs across Delaware, Pennsylvania, upstate New York. I get around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I call it Windshield University, man.
Yep.
There's no excuse. That's how I wrote my book, dude. That just a fun segue. People are like, how do you find time to do all these things? And I was like, do you understand how much time you waste in your car?
Oh my gosh.
If people have a commuting corporate job, right? People need help, right? Corporate monkeys I used to be.
Yep.
Dude, Winchell University, even if it's only a 30-minute commute, that's advantage. That's the advantage in 2023 here, man. Yeah. Dude, just pause the book or pause the podcast. Or if somebody decided to take all your tapes and then republish them as digital content, exactly. Right? Yeah. I highly, highly love to promote Windshield University. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's just a different medium now, but it's the same thing. And it's much more, it's easier now. It's more convenient. It's, oh my gosh, the things we can do now, it's unbelievable. But she really opened my eyes to understanding, kind of what was going on here, that a lot of what was going on wasn't rational. And as I know you're super aware, you've had other guests on, ultra processed food can be incredibly addictive.
Oh yeah.
So
they did that in a lab on purpose. So
exactly. One of the things that's going into why are people waiting? Why are people not making the changes that they may know? Some of them kind of know. A lot of people come to me and they're like, I know what to do. I just need to do it. I know what to do. I just need to do it. Most times that's not true. Most times when they say that, what they're saying is they're saying the mechanical elements, nutrition and exercise. I know it's calories in, calories out. I know I need to eat a little better, a little healthier, a little less. I know I need to exercise a little more, a little better, a little more, and whatever. And I know that's the case. I know there's some kind of energy equation here. And I know that's what, needs to happen. I just need to do it. They're missing at least 4 other pillars. And unless they have that in our obesogenic environment, if there's someone who struggles, look, if you're someone if you're just someone that says, I'm going to lose 20 pounds and you lose 20 pounds, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
You're not the one I'm talking to 99% of the time.
That's a brief hiccup. I mean, it's like, okay, you can crush out 10, 20 pounds, especially as a male. I mean, obviously there's different hormonal influences from male versus females. Again, I've been around the circuit for a while. So my wife complains about that from time to time. She's like, you just go into the gym and you come back out and all of a sudden you look swole. I was like, yeah, because the body's happy. But and I'm lean, so things show up.
It shows,
yeah. And then just as a fun segue though, the only time I counted a calorie in my life, because I don't fully align with the SECO method, but I mean you have a lot more pillars you're going to hit on here, which I know is important. But
sure.
We were burning 10 to 12,000 calories a day in wildland firefighting.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I
was like, oh. I don't know what that means. Who does the math on that, right? Yeah, and so then we were just consuming. Like we had cargo, our fire resistant pants had cargo pockets. We were just stuffing. I mean, it was garbage. I mean, again, this is federal. The fire camps had skids, pallets of just Cliff Bars. You just I cannot eat another Cliff Bar in my entire life ever again. But I mean, the fire lunches, the lunch meat, we called them meat wads because once they got all heated up in your pack, it just all kind of molded together. The bread, the cheese, it was just nasty. But what I know today, I wouldn't consume half of what I consumed back then.
Yeah.
Like I'm older now and I have zero joint pain because I personally cut excessive sugars out, grains, all that processed garbage, manufactured foods, the things with the seed oils, very inflammatory. I have no joint pain. when I was firefighting at 31 and 32, I would go to bed, on the forest floor every night. We always camped out, and I would have throbbing legs. Yeah, we worked hard that day, but it was like, no. It would you wake up the next day and still have it. It wasn't fun. So, yeah. But these pillars.
So what's going on? So, so much is just take personal responsibility. Just buck up, man.
Yeah.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do this. Except that we are in this incredibly obesogenic environment. And by obesogenic, it's just, your listeners probably know what it means. But to me, it just means that all things external and internal that drive the overconsumption of ultra-processed food, including the fact that ultra-processed food is addictive, which also drives the overconsumption of ultra-processed food, which is also obesogenic. So all the things that do that, and our marketing, fast food restaurant number and locations, a convenience store number and locations, 24/7 access to everything, subsidies, on and on and on, and the social environments, the things that we do when we're together, the things that are supposedly showing love, the things that are, the things that we do when we mourn, when we celebrate, all of those things that are cultural, social, all of those things in totality are factors that I look at and consider them obesogenic. So what people are unaware of, so many people are unaware of all of those factors in totality and in the incredible influence they have on our decisions if we're not very conscious, very aware, very educated on what's really going on and what the relationships are. And so one of the factors is addiction. One of the factors is addiction that goes beyond nutrition and exercise. And if there is an addictive component, then it isn't going to be rational. It is not going to make sense. You're not going to make sense of it rationally by just saying, well, if you're addicted to crack, just smoke a little less. Just take just a couple of hits and call it a good. No, if you're an alcoholic and you're the type that has to go zero, then zero is the number. And sometimes, there's a saying, one of the things that I think is a big problem is we've got this moderation in all things message. Moderation in all things, moderation in all things. Well, it's moderation in all things, including moderation. And so,
well said. Well
right.
said.
So sometimes zero is better than one. Now, I'm not pitching a message here. Let me go back to that person that needs to lose 20 pounds. I want to make sure I'm clear. If someone needs to lose 20 pounds and they're struggling, I am talking to you. If someone has lost 20 pounds because they said to themselves, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, and they did, and they just did it, I'm not talking to you. You have whatever you have. Congratulations. Awesome. You did what you did. Outstanding. I mean, seriously, congratulations.
Yeah. If you set your goal and your why was strong enough and you achieved it, great. Hopefully you did it in a healthy way, because there's also right and wrong ways to go through weight loss.
My dad, when he quit smoking, he said, I'm not going to smoke anymore. And he was done. So if I was that kind of a coach, I'm not talking to my dad. He just did it. All right. So I want to make sure I'm clear. It's my message is for the people who keep scratching their head, keep wondering what's wrong with them, in quotes, what's going on. There's not anything wrong with you. You're not deficient, defective, stupid, weak-willed. You're none of those things. You are unaware of all of the obesogenic factors that you need to be armed to fight against. And then you need the right tools and support so that you can do that. You can't, it's hard to fight a foe if you don't know what it is. And you're like,
especially the advanced foes we have today that you've already, touched on. I mean, just manufactured food alone. I mean, I think Vinny released this whole sugars list in his, he has a guide he gives away. And I even didn't realize there's so many versions of sugar nowadays. There's, thanks to the labs and the sugar alcohols, they can hide so many layers within an ingredient profile and not even have to put it on the nutritional grid, because you have to be a certain percentage to even go in that grid. They can just hide it down in the paragraph below. And then next thing you know, the first 4 to 5 ingredients are in the paragraph. They're all forms of sugar. But once you add all those up, now you have a significant prevalence of an addictive trait, that's been manufactured against you. Back to your point, right? That's just one example. That's just the food. So quote food.
Right. And so, for me, I've adapted. So, all right, pillar, and I don't mean 1 and 2 with regard to priority, but a pillar, there's 6 pillars that we look at. Nutrition is 1, exercise is 1, why power is 1, why power driving willpower. People say, I don't have any willpower. Yes, you do. You've exhibited it in I can't tell you how many ways. You have done other things that have taken a long time and that have been hard, and that fit how I see willpower. My definition of willpower is doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. Doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. Everybody listening to this has done that.
Yeah.
You've got a job, you work for somebody else. You don't go to the job always when you're happy. You don't go to the job only when you feel good, when you're not sick. You go to the job after you cried for 30 minutes. You go to the job when the kids are sick. You go to the job when you had the argument with the spouse. You go to the job when you blah, 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 blah. And you go, not only do you go on time. And you do it like no matter what. That's willpower. You've got kids, you got to pick them up from school. You're never late. You always pick them up. You never forget them. It's because the why is so incredibly strong for the job. The why is so incredibly strong on what you want for a relationship with your kids that you will do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. That same mindset, pillar number 3, why power, has to apply in the weight management space. Again, remember who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the person who has struggled, the person who has yo-yoed, the person who lost 30, regained 40, the person who's been trying to get off 25, 50, 75, 150 pounds for 10 years, and they haven't done it. With that in mind, we've got to have a why that's incredibly strong. When we get that with why power driving willpower, we're setting ourselves up better for success. But we're not done. If we don't address compulsive overeating, the potential for addiction, that's what I'm talking about there. Triggered eating, compulsive overeating, all one and the same. We don't address the possibility that for you, moderation in all things may not work.
Mm-hmm.
For you, 0 in certain instances with certain ultra-processed foods at certain times of day, in certain situations, may need to be 0. And again, it's not across the board. It's not a message of, well, I guess I never get to have anything that tastes good ever again. No, but for you, it may need to be 0 at certain times. And Jack Canfield, author of Chicken Soup for the Soul,
classic,
says this, and he says, and it relates perfectly to this. He says, 99% is a bitch, 100% is bliss.
Nice.
Sometimes, not most of the time. I'm all about, let's avoid perfectionism. Let's go for exceptional. Let's strive for exceptional excellence, not perfectionism, because perfectionism is a trap. It's going to set
totally
you
a
up
trap.
for
I can't stand the word anymore. Everybody has to be, it's got to be perfect. I mean, there's no such thing.
No, there's no such thing.
It's like unrealistic expectations.
It is. You're going to fail. You're going to fall down, and then you're going to feel bad. And it's just, you set yourself up. So exceptional is what we're striving for. However, sometimes for certain, again, instances, and that message gets pitched, again, part of the whole message, the whole kind of top-down message that comes from government, EDU, Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and all of the above and more is all things in moderation. You don't ever say no to anything. If you do, you're not living a lifestyle. If you do, you're orthorexic. If you do, you're on these. It's ridiculous. They're not saying some people sometimes in certain situations 0 is better than 1. And sometimes if that isn't addressed, you can have the other things I'll talk about here in place, and you're still sunk. And you go, I know nutrition, I know exercise, I got a hell of a why. Wait a minute, I'm still falling down here. Yeah, because we still got a drug that's literally changing your brain, that's literally hijacked your brain, that's literally got you thinking in distorted ways. And you go, yeah, all the things that happens when we're addicted to something. All right, that's, say, pillar number 4. All right, pillar number 5, all the emotional fitness things. If we're not emotionally fit, if we're not strong with respect to how we manage life and the ability to manage the craziness that is life in healthy, productive ways, then it can fall apart. If there's, Dr. Viktor Frankl, author of Man's Search for Meaning, classic, concentration camp survivor, said between the stimulus and the response, there's a space. And within that space, we all have the right, or the ability, I should say, to choose our response. And so for a lot of people, again, people I'm talking to, the people that have struggled and been trying to figure this out, when there's a stimulus, a lot of times it's response. Just, what do? Escape. I need escape right now. I can't handle this. life has fallen apart. I've gone catastrophic. It feels overwhelming. I've got to handle this. So I'm either going to drink or I'm going to eat or something's going to happen. And so when we're more emotionally fit, we feel more authentically good more often. We're better life managers. We can put that a little pause in there and a little space between the stimulus and the response. We can put that space in there. We can make the better decision in the moment. And that's something that just comes with continued education, continued personal development, making sure that we've got things like gratitude, sleep, connection, self-compassion, mindfulness.
There's a great book that popped in my head. The 5-second rule, Mel Robbins.
Yeah.
Yeah. That space you're talking about. Sometimes some people, that's all they need. They just got to pause, take a breath, 1 to 5 seconds, just allow your brain to catch up. Because you're right. So, we just jump to a thing and then it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And we're not, to your earlier point, we're not self-aware enough to realize that we keep making those mistakes. And that's where coaches come in and train, people there, in your corner to help you realize what am I missing is what I'm hearing from you. So
yes. And one of the elements of emotional fitness is self-awareness. It's when you have more self-awareness, when you are more conscious, what happens is you go catastrophic less. You don't go catastrophic. It's like I had an argument with my spouse or my significant other or whatever. You go, oh, that's it. Well, I guess we're going to end up divorced. I'll be homeless, alone, living under a bridge, penniless. Nobody will ever love me ever again. Whatever the thing is, I know I'm exaggerating, but I think your listeners will all get that we all do that to some extent. If something is really the thing that lights us up quick, or if something's become what we call a conditioned automated response, it's conditioned. It's like Pavlov's dogs. He rang the bell and they would salivate. There are certain things for certain people in their lives, and it's important to be aware of these things that have become conditioned, and you have an automated response to them. That awareness is a part of emotional fitness. So emotional fitness as a whole is a 5th pillar. So the 6th pillar then is engagement of as needed, engagement of personal, professional, and spiritual support. Whatever that is to you. Spiritual doesn't mean you have to be religious. Spiritual just means something that's just generally faith-based. I'm not religious. My faith is more, it's all happening perfectly, even though I don't understand why right now. No. I'm just a human being. I'm not omnipotent. So I don't know all that was, is, and will be. And I have humility that I'm not going to always be able to understand what the heck's going on here. So, but engagement, again, who am I talking to? The person who's been struggling. If you've been struggling, you haven't figured it out yet, again, there's nothing wrong with you. We've got an incredibly obesogenic environment. We need to have more and better education on proper nutrition, on exercise, but also why power. How do we develop the why? How do we make it so that it is fully developed? How do we make it so that it is driving every day, motivation? Slide over to what about compulsive eating? What about triggers? What about potential addiction stuff? If we don't address that, you're going to look like, what happens is addiction makes really smart people look stupid.
Yeah, I would agree.
Addiction makes really strong people look weak. Addiction makes really rational people look really irrational. And until that's addressed, it stays that way. So we can. And there's ways to do it so that it's the least painful, so that it's something you're like, oh, yeah, I can do that. Okay, I'm not giving up everything. I'm not having to say no to everything. This isn't about how much gets being taken away from me. No, if you address it that way, then you don't know what you're doing. Emotional fitness, we continue to develop that over time, so you just feel stronger. As we say in this business that I've been doing online for 24 years, 30 years all in, but 24 years online, it's an inside-out job. It is. We've got to develop that inside so that the outside can change.
Much deeper than just saying the word why. Yes, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and so all of these things, which are anything that I've mentioned, is always really just the tip of the iceberg sticking out of the water that we see, right? All the stuff that goes into it. How do we address this? That's all in the below the surface, the deeper stuff. This can be won. If we try to oversimplify it, look, again, you can tell 5 people in 100 dude, just eat less and exercise more. And 5 out of 100 will be like, okay. And they'll do it.
And those 5 might be also self-aware enough to do some of their own research, read up on. It's not just obviously, again, eating less is a very generalized statement. It's like, maybe cutting all the bad stuff out.
Right.
And then making sure you're putting nutrient dense whole foods back in, et cetera, et cetera. Right. If you don't have sourcing dialed in, right, then look at supplementation, right? All of that. But again, the average person doesn't have that, what you're talking about, that mental focus, that dialed in. I don't know. It sounds like you and I are definitely cut from some of the similar cloths. Like I flip a switch, I'm in, done. Yeah. Lock and load. What I've got to research, what I've got to study, I'll figure it out. If I can't figure it out, then I'll start reaching out to the coaches, the influencers, the people that I know. I will track them down to get the information, but I'm also very self-motivated. So I've always been that way.
And, and the thing is that each of us has our thing, and each of us has our thing that needs work. And so for anybody listening, I'm always in amazement at what my clients can do in their life and do in their life. Holy crap. You do this for a living. Wow. Holy crap. You were a firefighter in the major, fires out in the West, and you did, holy crap. That's unbelievable. That's my mind. I'm in awe of the amazing
you served in a job where you can get shot to death.
Right.
My buddies who were military the same way. I was like, man, you fall fire. I'm like,
yes,
I can't get shot. I was like, I'll take Mother Nature. And then they're like, no, you're the crazy one. But everybody's got these. I mean, just somebody who goes and works in a grocery store, the level of customer service you have to have, and the day in and day out. Like, I never poo-poo any job. I'm like, dude,
no.
Everybody's
but
got
I'm just saying that it's like you and I got this, but there are other things that I'm not the best at, and there's things that I have to work on in my personal life where it's like, I need a coach. When it comes to the business side of things, I know marketing is incredibly important, and you need it, and it needs to be a 7-day a week thing and blah, blah, blah. But it's not something I enjoy doing. It's not something that, it's not something that comes natural to me from that perspective. I'd rather work in my business and develop the tools and be working with people in the trenches. And that's great. But if you don't have the marketing, then you don't get to do that other stuff. And so, the fitness side comes more natural to me. Some of the other things I have to work at. I hire coaches. I reach out. I seek the services. I read the books on that because that's a weakness for me.
I have a new business coach now. I'm on my 3rd one now over 10, 15 years, because eventually you tap them out, and then it's time to change up, like level up. Okay, great. They got me to a whole new level. It was sustained now, proven. Okay, maybe sometimes you got to shake that up too. That's great for what you guys do. It's like, I'm sure you probably have had people just, they've loaded, they've followed everything that you're supposed to do. They've learned, and maybe it's 5-10 years later and they're good now. You can like, hey, it's like letting that bird fly free. You got everything you need.
It's a great way to say it. What I say is, the research, and I'll back it up with 30 years in it. The research says on obesity is a chronic relapsing condition. My goal for my students is to kill the relapsing part.
There you go.
I can't kill the chronic. I don't mean like you're going to be obese chronically. I mean, like, there's going to have to be some consciousness. There's going to have to be some continued effort. It's not the same effort in maintenance as it was when you were in the early stages of action, when everything was front brain, nothing was subconscious. It was all like, oh my God, I'm learning new. No, once you've been doing it for a few years and you've been at maintenance for a few years, it gets easier and easier and easier and easier. Like anything that you've done well, for a number of years. But what I say is, with that in mind, and the fact that it can take years to really have it become a part of your psyche and your day-to-day, a good teacher is someone who makes himself progressively unnecessary.
Yes.
So that's my goal. My goal is to be able to get to the point in time when it's appropriate for whoever the student is and whatever their individuality is, to get to the point where I can say just what you said: fly, birdie, fly.
Well, again, not to simplify your 6 pillars, but after people go through a whole curriculum and a program and have all the guidance, yes, you're not saying I'm going to cure your chronic addiction issues. No, you're now aware. You're self-aware. Now you know about it. You understand it. You know how to work through it. And that's one of the reasons why one of the longest standing programs out there for addiction is AA. I got two friends of my wife's, husband and wife. They met in AA. They've been married for years now. They've been sober for 20 years. They recognized that they had an addictive issue years ago.
Yeah.
And they said, no. And they're still doing that. I'm like, yeah, but I feel like you have all this time. And they're like, no, for us, we realize, no, we got to stay in it. We got to keep following the program. And that's for them, but they're aware of that. Yes. Like the one's a lawyer, the one's an entrepreneur. They're both very successful people.
Right.
They know that they have to go to AA. They have to follow that curriculum. That's just somebody they can't grow beyond. They need that comfort and that structure. So,
and that continued support, because, you know, in some of these areas, the draw, the lure is always potentially there.
Yeah.
It does get quieter. Sometimes it goes seemingly completely quiet where we don't feel it, you know, anymore. But like you said, the people that have that self-awareness, and I'll say this, and the respect for what it is, because, you know, I say to my clients, in this space, in the obesity space, respectful fear, good. And I don't mean like, I don't want you cowering in a corner with a laundry basket over your head, sucking your thumb, but respectful fear, good. I'll have somebody, they've lost 60 pounds. They'll be like, Coach, I'll tell you, I feel great. I can't believe it, but I'm so nervous about regaining the weight. I go, good. I don't want you terrified. No. And we're going to continue to build that confidence. But for now, I want you to have respectful fear. So I say respectful fear, good. Confidence matched with humility, good. Okay. Be confident. Have it matched with humility. All right. And then I'll say cocky, very bad. And so, you know, with your friends, they have the first two. Your friends that you were just talking about, the AA friends.
Yep.
They have the first two. They don't have the third. They're not cocky.
Yeah.
And so, as I say, cocky, very bad. When it comes to this space, respectful fear, good. Confidence matched with humility, good. Cocky, very bad.
Yeah.
And so it's good. It's good to have that. You just made me think of that because you were just talking about your friends.
I like that. I was actually adding those notes here because I want to use them in our show notes, because I think, you know, respectful fear, confidence matched humility, and cocky, very bad. I like how simple that is. And back to your earlier point in the show, like sometimes simplicity is needed. Like keep it lean, keep it simple.
Yes. Yes. So no, we just try to meet our clients where they are. Like if somebody comes to me, you know, I owned a large CrossFit competition for about 7 years, Scott. I don't know if you've ever heard of Festivus Games, but I owned that for 7 years. And so
you were Festivus? I used to run one of those. Well, I'm here in Allentown, Pennsylvania, but I used to be a trainer and a coach at my friend's facility in Bethlehem for years. And we ran a festival. Actually, I remember because I still to this day judge events because all my friends own gyms. Yeah. So, but I just built my own in my new pole barn in my house here. So I was like, well, I have my own. But the Festivus was popular for a while.
Yeah, it's still rocking and rolling. We sold it in April of 22, and the new owner's rocking and rolling, putting 15, 20,000 athletes through it, you know, a year. And
it's one of the earliest events I ever judged. It's a small world. That's funny.
It is small. Yeah. No, but no, it's it's a lot of fun. And I don't remember why I mentioned that, but there was some purpose to it, but it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, I think it's funny because I can align with everything you and I talked on today's show. As we're coming to the end of the show here, you can transplant that into the CrossFit world. Like a lot of people think, oh, I can never go do that, right? And I'm like, well, it's just functional fitness. CrossFit's just a brand, okay? Like go look there, and my friend's gym 5 minutes from here, my wife goes to. Dude, there's people from all walks of life. Not everybody wants to go compete in the CrossFit Games. You know, right. But some like the Festivus, those games, a lot of people like, then she wants to see where you're at, you know, it's like a little test, and maybe it builds some confidence. Maybe it keeps you anchored more in what you've learned nutritionally and physically, etc. So some people need that. I was kind of
it can be just fun. I mean, and I only say it this way. This isn't to promote Festivus Games. It's a fine thing. And, you know, as Festivus Games, feats of strength for the rest of us, you know, that was the tagline. You know, it was obviously a play on Seinfeld's Festivus for the rest of us.
It's classic. Yeah,
it is. So, but the thing is that it can also give you something to give your training purpose. Mm-hmm. You know, some people are like, man, every time I train, it's always just to lose weight, burn calories, lose weight, burn calories. Okay, But ideally, if we can give our training purpose beyond that, give it some deeper meaning, give it something where we feel like we're doing something for even more purposes than just caloric burn and all of that, then it's just a better thing. Whether we're doing it because we're a part of a charity, or it's because we're a part of a social group, or
I'm a big OCR guy, Tough Mudder, Spartans, all that. I mean, when I was coaching years ago, I would say, hey guys, just because you don't want to do the games, why don't we put together a group event, go do a Tough Mudder together?
Yeah.
Right. It's just if people sometimes they just need something to train for. So they
Yeah.
got the why dialed in, but like, what's that new goal? It doesn't
Right.
have to be huge, but just
No.
something to set your sights on.
Right. Absolutely. Now, as we say, if you're looking for an argument, we'll have to change subjects. I'm with you.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we've had an epic show today. I knew you and I would just geek out and align on a lot of things. And I'm definitely using those: respectful fear, confidence, match humility, and cocky very bad. That's fun. And thank you for sharing the 6 pillars. I think it's important for people to understand that we're not trying to make it complicated, but it's important people to understand that it's not just as simple as, oh, I'll just fix the kitchen, or I'll just fix this, or I'll just fix that. It's a formula.
Yes.
And we're not trying to make it complicated, but I think it's a big thing of awareness, especially now more than ever. If this was 50 years ago, maybe we didn't need all 6 pillars, but it's not 50 years ago.
Right.
There's so many boosted levels of negative influence on us, whether it be manufactured processed garbage, or the psychological strains, or the excessive digital life triggering. All of this stuff is at a whole different level nowadays. So
it is.
But listen, my guest co-hosts, I always ask them to kind of help bring the show to a close. So the way I do this is, because you've been at it for a while, so I know you got something for us, is now that I've been podcasting this long, I wrote the book and started a charity. It really awakened the term legacy in my mind, in my spirit. So it's like, you've been at it for a while. I obviously already talked about LLUniversity.com. People go check that out. But like, if you could sum things up right now where you're at with what you've attained and the amount of people you've been able to influence, what would be an all-encompassing message you'd like to leave behind for the audience? Is there a legacy that you're already working on now, actually, thanks to all your career success? But what would you like to leave behind for them?
Honestly, it's the reason I transitioned out of supplements.
Okay.
I sold a supplement company and I went all in on LLU because I started thinking about what were the positive things that people were saying about me and to me with regard to the supplements. Hey, thanks for the great prices, the fast shipping, the protein that helped me get ready for the thing, the whatever the thing was. And I literally went, this was back in 97, 98. I have got so much more in me than that. And on the back of my tombstone, I don't want thanks for the fast shipping, thanks for the low prices, thanks for that. I said, I want to really have done everything I can to help people truly transform from the inside out, and have their lives be bettered, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in ways that transcend not only their life, but that they can then share with and help the next generation and the next generation and the next. So, and so that's why I'm so passionate about making sure people understand what they're facing, what's going on, because I want them to win. I really want them to win, and they can if they have the information and the support and the system. So I mean, that's not really a pretty simple, answer, but it really is all about helping people to be their best selves and have that transcend. I've got grandkids now, Scott. So I see my kids with their kids.
Yeah.
We were just there this weekend. We were in Dallas visiting and seeing the grandkids. I can't tell you how important it is and how special it is for me to see, the influence that.
Well, there's the epitome of legacy.
Yes.
Right? That's just through your own bloodline.
It is.
I mean, that can totally reflect into the outer world through friends, clients, etc. That was the point of the question. It's not about getting a simple answer. It was really more of, that's what I've interviewed so many entrepreneurs over the years, and doctors and PhDs and everything else. And I realized this was just a fun question it just came out of me, and it became a regular part of the show because I'm always intrigued to see how people are going to answer. And it's fun to see that. I think each of us throughout life will eventually reach that point in our lives where I hope is okay. What is a legacy I'm leaving behind on this planet or in this universe? Right.
Yeah.
Cause that's something that is above and beyond just us. And then it helps people realize that we're a cog in the system or a gear or a tooth on the gear, whatever you want to refer to that as. But there is a process, eventually we will pass on. Yeah. Hopefully there's something like you said, not all business on my tombstone.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And something that's truly inspirational and motivates other people to do better with their own lives as we proceed down that path. So yeah. Well said. I appreciate that. Listen,
thanks for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely. Hang tight. I'll give you a proper goodbye off the air. Ladies and gentlemen, again, if you vibed with David today, and obviously you're always going to vibe with me because it's my show, but obviously check him out. Okay. Remember, lluniversity.com, and you get to learn all about him in much more depth, obviously much more from the show today. Definitely check out the nice, thick, heavy book. It is a winner, The Leanness Lifestyle. And remember, we're here to fuel your health, your business, and your lifestyle. David helped us do that today. So remember, you too can live the fuel, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.